This is a Tracking the Tropics update with the certified most accurate weather team at First Coast News.
Hello everyone, we are monitoring the Caribbean yet again. Same location, same area where we watched Rafael and so many systems this season so far. So yet again, we have another system that we are watching that has a high chance of development in the next 7 days. So in the next 7 days, a concern for the Caribbean. Beyond 7 days, perhaps a concern for parts of Florida. So that's what we're here to talk about because nothing has actually formed yet, but it does look more and more likely like a system will form and then therefore become Sara and perhaps head towards the Gulf and try to move towards Florida. So here's a look at the tropical wave right now. This is out there in the Caribbean trying to get its act together, and it looks like it will actually do a pretty good job of getting its act together because it could become a depression within the next 3 days. So the conditions conditions down there are favorable. We have warm waters, we have lower wind shear, so it will allow that system to start to organize. So again, a tropical depression could perhaps form by the end of the work week. So that's why then in 7 days, there's a high chance of it forming, because not only is it a high chance of it becoming a tropical depression, but some models are showing that it might even become a hurricane, perhaps as early as the weekend. So let's take a look at the models here. What I'm going to show you are different models. They are not an exact forecast. Again, this system has not formed. The one thing I can guarantee you is that this track will change, especially because it has not formed yet. So I'm going to show you some insider information, some background to what we look at to try to put our forecast together so you can get a better idea of what we are looking at and what we are expecting. So this first model I'm going to show you is called the GFS model. It's also known as the American model. You have your timestamp there on the top right-hand corner. Notice that by the end of the week, it shows it actually organizing and becoming a tropical depression or perhaps even a tropical storm. From there, it strengthens it into a hurricane over the weekend, still in the Caribbean. So if you have any interest in the Caribbean, people are going on cruises this time of year or vacationing to places like Jamaica or the Cayman Islands. This is a system to watch for the next 5 to 7 days. We could perhaps have a hurricane in the Caribbean by the weekend. From there, it's going to move north towards the Gulf of Mexico. Pause it right here. This is where models start disagreeing. Where is it going to go beyond? And I cannot give you an answer yet. So I'm going to show you again different model outputs, and this is guaranteed to change within the next 6 to 12 hours because again, nothing has formed yet. So what I show you is not going to, I'm not saying that is absolutely going to happen. This model here shows that a hurricane could head towards the southwestern coast of Florida. So that shows landfall by the middle of next week, somewhere in the southwestern coast. So again, that's just one model run. Let's look at a different model. This is the European model. It does show something trying to form by the end of the work week, maybe a tropical depression trying to get its act together. From there, over the weekend, it shows the system meandering in the Caribbean, trying to get to hurricane strength. So that kind of aligns as well with the GFS. The other thing that it aligns with is going to move north towards the Gulf of Mexico, perhaps bring some impacts to western Cuba, which by the way, just felt impacts from Rafael. And then here's a couple of differences from the European model. One, a smaller, tighter system, it looks like, doesn't seem like it's as large. And then it moves it to the east more. So it moves over the northern coast of Cuba. It weakens it, of course, because it will be interacting with that land. And so this is more of a concern for places like maybe South Florida, perhaps maybe Miami, but that is where it moves it. So here's those two side by side, European and GFS. European's in green, the GFS is in that bluish purplish color. It shows something forming in the next few days by the end of the week. The GFS is stronger than the European. Then it shows the system meandering in the Caribbean through the weekend, likely strengthening into a hurricane. Then it moves the system north towards the Gulf of Mexico, and from there they diverge. Notice the GFS 1 is faster. It moves it into the Gulf faster, and we know that it's trying to curve it towards the southwestern coast of Florida, maybe around Fort Myers, maybe south of Tampa. While meanwhile, I just showed you the European, which makes it a huge Cuba problem and takes it across maybe the Keys and South Florida. So a lot of differences there, but it's still Florida. So we are watching it closely because from there, you know, I already showed you all the different scenarios that we could have with just two models showing you that. So it's too early to say if you're watching from the first coast, from the Jacksonville area or market, what impacts we could get from this. Perhaps nothing at all, perhaps some rain. We will know that in time. First, we have to let this system actually organize and become a tropical depression. We'll get the hurricane hunters out there and we'll get a lot more information and be able to get a better grip on what this is doing. Again, Sara, that is the name that it will be given. But we do have high confidence in it actually forming into a Sara, at least a tropical storm. Models try to bring it to hurricane strength. We have the ingredients. We have the warm water. Look at that. Temperatures in the 80s, very warm. So it is likely, when it comes to the water temperature, that's the ingredient that we need to really fuel and feed these storms. So that's just one of the ingredients needed for hurricane development, but it's there. Unfortunately, these waters are incredibly warm. So it's been a very active season. As mentioned, the next name on the list is Sara. So we will watch for Sara to form. There's a look at all of the storms, all of the hurricanes, major hurricanes. Remember when we were talking about Beryl back in June? And unfortunately, the season has not slowed down. So this is, again, we are in hurricane season. We're towards the end of the season. We usually don't have a lot of major hurricanes in November. So Raphael was a big major hurricane that's pretty rare for this time of year, because usually we have the cooling waters, we have the cold fronts, and we have the wind shear that really tries, the wind shear and the cooler waters inhibit hurricane development, but we still have the ingredients out there. And it's not unheard of to have tropical systems, tropical depressions, or tropical storms in November, and that is why hurricane season goes until the end of November. So I have gotten a lot of comments about, does Mother Nature know it's November? Yes, Mother Nature knows. Unfortunately, we always have had hurricane season until the end of November. And you can even see here on this map, or this graph, I should say, even a few storms every once in a while pop up outside of the season in December or in January. So again, something we'll be watching, but just a friendly reminder that we are in hurricane season still. So this is a normal, more active than normal season. This is the 30-year average. And remember, the 30-year average changes. So if you've been in Florida for a long time, over 30 years, these numbers used to be even lower. But these averages, 13 named storms usually by today, November 12th. Usually we have 6 hurricanes by now and 3 major hurricanes by now. This is what it has been so far. We've had 17 named storms so far, 11 hurricanes so far, and 5 major hurricanes, category 3 or higher. So again, very active season. And unfortunately, it looks like we will at least be putting another named storm, another number higher on this outlook here on our season so far compared to the average number of storms. So just a crazy busy season. Bear with me here real quick. Let's just look back at what we've dealt with so far this season. We had Alberto, and then, of course, most of us remember Beryl because that shattered records. Our first category 4 and category 5 hurricane in June, earliest on record. Then we had Chris, which made landfall in Mexico. And then we had Debbie. Do you remember Debbie impacting parts of the first coast back in August? Of course, we've had so much more since Debbie. We had Ernesto out there in the Atlantic. Then Francine impacted portions of Louisiana, like New Orleans. Then we had Gordon back out in the Atlantic. And then, of course, we had Helene, which impacted portions of the first coast and much more than the first coast, too, still recovering in places like the Carolinas and Tennessee. And then we had Isaac out there in the Atlantic. Joyce was forming out there in the Atlantic. Kirk stayed out in the Atlantic as well, but it became a major category 4 hurricane. Leslie formed in the Atlantic, and then we went back to Milton. And again, don't need to really remind you of all the horrible things Milton did. Category 5 in the Gulf, made landfall, impacted portions of the first coast and devastated parts of Florida. Then we had Nadine, which was down in Central America and portions of Mexico. Oscar hit portions of Cuba, and then we had to go all the way out towards the Azores where Patty formed not too long ago. And then after Patty, we of course had Raphael, which we just dealt with too. So this is a look at a snapshot at your hurricane season so far. Extremely active season. Look at all of those named storms over in the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean area, which is again where we are watching our next system. So again, a high chance of development in the Caribbean in the next 7 days. It will be named Sara once it becomes a tropical storm. And then from there, in Florida, we are watching this system beyond 7 days. It could perhaps bring impacts to parts of Florida beyond 7 days. I'm just going to quickly look here at Facebook to see if you have any questions that I can answer. Can the U.S. government control the direction of the storm? Asking for a friend from Georgia, says Mark. Absolutely not. No. No, the US government cannot control the direction of these storms. They cannot create these storms. These are humongous, powerful monster storms, and we cannot control them. We cannot direct them. I wish we could. I promise you we would if we could. No, meteorologists or the government, they cannot control that at all. Let's see what else we have.
Susie wanted to know if the Gulf waters have cooled down.
Hi, Susie. Okay, has the Gulf water cooled down? Yes, a bit, but it's still warm enough to produce hurricanes. You need waters 79, 80 degrees or warmer, and we have that. So we still have waters in the Gulf warm enough to produce hurricanes or to strengthen these systems and sustain development of tropical systems. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly stay on this in case anyone else has any other questions. Let's see here, and I'm going to just, okay, good. We're going to leave this up. Again, why we have done this is because it hasn't formed yet, but it is a system that could potentially develop and impact portions of Florida, maybe South Florida, maybe Southwest Florida. So it's something we're going to watch extremely closely. We ask you to please check back in for updates. So you're already doing the right thing by watching this and getting all the information. Also, if you have any interest in the Caribbean, if you have family, friends, you're vacationing down there, please keep a close eye on this system because it does look like at least a tropical storm, if not a hurricane, will be in the Caribbean within the next 5 days. So we will keep a very close eye on this. But for now, we're going to send you back, but we will also have an update. Meteorologist Tim Deegan will have an update on First Coast News tonight at 5, 5:30, 6, and 7. And Ross Muma will have an update at 11. We'll be here all week, all through this storm and keeping you updated.